and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing the new Ridley Scott film, Napoleon. But just before I do that, I should say what's at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers. But if you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, even look, as you can listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whatever you're watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast, of course, and leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it, shall we? Napoleon. So, as I've already said, this is a new Ridley Scott film, and it stars Joaquin Pheonix and Vanessa Kirby. And if you don't know who Ridley Scott is, he has directed such films as Alien, Blade Runner, Thelma and Louise, Gladiator, which also starred Joaquin Phoenix, The Martian, the 2010 version of Robin Hood starring Russell Crowe, Kingdom of Heaven, Black Hawk Down, Exodus, Gods and Kings, Hannibal, which was a sequel to The Silence of the Lambs, which I actually quite like, I'm not going to lie, American Gangster, All the Money in the World, House of Gucci, The Last Duel, and now Napoleon. Just listen to that filmography. I mean, not all the films I mentioned there were great. I don't really like his take on Robin Hood. I thought it had some very well done battle sequences, but at the same time, it felt a bit dry for my liking. It didn't have that magic, say, that Robin Hood Prince of Thieves had. But saying that, it had its moments. Kingdom of Heaven, I don't remember liking too much, but again, it had its moments. Exodus, Gods and Kings, feel very similar about that as I do about Kingdom of Heaven. Hannibal, I think, is a really good sequel to Silence of the Lambs. Not as good because it didn't have Jodie Foster in. Julianne Moore is playing that role now, but you know, it had enough in there for me to like. And All the Money in the World, which came out in 2017, I actually quite liked that film. I don't think enough people talk about it. I think it's a very clever film that's very well made. And I really, really liked The Last Duel, which Ridley Scott directed, as I've already said, which starred, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Adam Driver, and Jodie Coleman. That film came out a good couple of years ago now. It came out in 2021, actually, so just a couple of years ago. And that film is very underrated, in my opinion. It's very, very good, and not enough people saw it. He also brought out House of Gucci in 2021. And I remember giving House of Gucci quite a good review on this channel, on my YouTube channel, when it came out. I think he even called it brilliant. I have since rewatched that film, and I don't think it's brilliant anymore. It's a very weird film, and I don't really like it that much, if I'm being honest. But at the same time, I still get excited for a new Ridley Scott film, because even though he has had his hits and his misses, his hits have been great. Alien is a great film. I don't love it quite as much as some other people do, but I think it is a really good horror film. Blade Runner is a sci-fi classic, the first Blade Runner. I mean, the second Blade Runner is very good as well, but he didn't direct that. Thelma and Louise, I just watched that recently. That film is so good. Gladiator, which is one of the best historical epics I have ever seen. The Martian, which I think surprised everybody when it came out, and according to the Golden Globes, was actually a musical and a comedy or something like that. Can't believe that. American Gangster, I think, is very much underrated, with Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington. I watched that from last year for the first time. Brilliant. And as we mentioned, The Last Duel, I think, is great. So the point I'm making is, I like more Ridley Scott films than I dislike his films. I like more of his films than I dislike them. And so when he brings on a new film, I get excited for it. And I got excited for Napoleon once I saw the trailers and once I saw the marketing, once I saw the cast. You got Joaquin Pheonix, who I think is one of the best actors working today. You got, Vanessa Kirby, who seems to be on a roll with her roles that she's choosing right now. She played Margaret in the first 2 seasons of The Crown, Princess Margaret at that. She's more recently been in the last 2 Mission Impossible films, and she holds her own in those films. And yeah, she's really entertaining to watch. And when she chose this, I thought, it's quite an interesting career move. But, especially right after just doing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 earlier this year, but still, nonetheless, it's quite an interesting career move, and she looks great in this. Rupert Everett has a role, and it was Ridley Scott doing another historical epic. Gladiator, as already mentioned, is one of the best historical epics I have ever seen personally. I'm not someone who's well versed in historical epic cinema, I've got to admit, but I remember watching that film and going, wow, this is just excellent filmmaking and a story that is so engaging and really makes you, it makes you feel a certain way, you know what I mean? And I remember watching Gladiator and absolutely loving it. The Last Duel, I've already mentioned, that's an historical epic, not on the same scale as Gladiator, but it is very good. And even the likes of Robin Hood, which I know isn't a historical epic the same way Napoleon or, say, The Last Duel is, but it is a film set in a period setting. It is an epic set in a period setting. Even that has a lot of great moments, and the same with Kingdom of Heaven, and the same with Exodus, Gods and Kings. Even though I don't think the last 3 films I mentioned there were particularly that good, they did have their moments, and I do think Ridley Scott has an eye for directing really great historical epics, and the last historical epic he did with Joaquin Phoenix was Gladiator, all the way back in 2000. And when I heard that he was doing another one, I was like, well, he's doing another one with Joaquin Phoenix? I was thinking, well, it's going to be good. Because Joaquin Phoenix is one of those... He seems like an actor who would only do a project if he believes in it, And so I was very, very excited for it. And then I saw the trailers, as I've already mentioned. I thought the trailers looked absolutely incredible. They looked like they were going to be... It looked like the film was going to be made to be seen at the cinema. It looked like it was going to be riveting and thrilling and brutal and visceral and all that sort of stuff, and I was really, really looking forward to seeing this film. Far more than I was expecting to, if you asked me earlier on the year. Like, if you asked me all the way back in January of 2023, I would have said, Napoleon I'll watch, but I'm not that interested in. I was sitting down in the cinema to watch this yesterday, and I was getting quite excited to watch Ridley Scott's interpretation of Napoleon. And I should say, I knew, and to be honest, I still don't know much, but I knew little to nothing about the real-life Napoleon before seeing this film. So I just watched it wanting to know more about this infamous historical figure, wanting to know more about this figure which is so famous and so many people still talk about. That's what I really wanted to learn about. That's what I really wanted to know. I wanted to know more about Napoleon when I went to go and watch it at the cinema. So, here's the point I'm making. I was really looking forward to it. I was hoping to learn more about Napoleon when I went to go and see this film yesterday. And I had an interesting experience, to say the least. Anyway, before I get into my thoughts on the film, here is the IMDb plot synopsis, an epic that details the checkered rise and fall of French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte and his relentless journey to power through the prism of his addictive, volatile relationship with his wife, Josephine. And that's pretty much all you need to know about the film before you see it. And honestly, you might have guessed already, and I did allude to it in the title of this podcast as well, I did not like this film. I had so much high hopes for it, and it's not awful, because I think the battle sequences, with the way they are staged, with the way they are directed, with the way they are edited, help save some of the film. That being said, it is a completely incoherent film, though. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't know any more about Napoleon than I did before I saw the film. I knew loads more about Oppenheimer another historical biopic which came out early this year. I knew loads more about Oppenheimer after watching that film about J. Robert Oppenheimer. I didn't know anything more about Napoleon after leaving the cinema yesterday, and I just felt like I'd wasted 2 hours and 38 minutes of my time because the film has this weird thing about it where it feels both too long and too short. You keep getting all these bits of his life. The whole film feels like a best of album of Napoleon, and I wanted just a straight up album. Just tell us a story. Just tell us a story. Focus on one section of his life, maybe, like Oppenheimer did earlier this year. And I'm going to compare it to Oppenheimer a bit in this review because that is another historical biopic which came out this year, and it's far, far better in telling the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, of this infamous historical figure. And that's what Napoleon never did well. It didn't tell me a story that was that engaging or compelling, and I was sat there watching it going, why should I care about any of this? I don't care about what's going on whatsoever, and the storytelling is done in such an unengaging and stale fashion that by the time you get to certain pivotal and quite important moments in the story, I was sat there going, I just don't care anymore. Because why? The film didn't give me a reason to care. And I hate to say this about Joaquin Phoenix because I really think he is an amazing actor. I think there's a certain essence and certain performance he brings to a film, and I can't wait to see what he does next. I think he's doing Joker 2 next, and I think he's going to be absolutely terrific in that film, opposite Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. I think he is one of the best actors around right now. His performance in this film is not good. It feels like he was doing a performance and Ridley Scott didn't give any direction to it. It just felt like Ridley Scott went, just keep doing that, Joaquin. Don't worry, your performance is great. You'll probably get an Academy Award nomination because you're Joaquin Phoenix and you've already won an Academy Award for Joker and you've been nominated how many times? So, keep doing your performance. Don't worry, it's fine. People like it because it's you. And I was watching the performance going, I don't feel like I'm watching Napoleon. I feel like I'm watching Joaquin Phoenix play Napoleon, but not particularly well. It just felt like Ridley Scott didn't give any direction to his performance. And, it didn't really feel like... I didn't really feel like I was watching Napoleon. And again, I don't know much about Napoleon. I said that earlier on this podcast. I don't really know much about Napoleon at all, if I'm being completely honest. But at the same time, though, it doesn't sound like Ridley Scott does either. If you hear him in an interview recently, it's like, I just wanted to make my interpretation of Napoleon. I don't really care about listening to historians about his life. I didn't talk to any of them. I just made the film I wanted to make. And, good for him. He's at that age now where he is just making whatever he wants to make. So I'm not going to diss Ridley Scott. I'm not going to criticise him for... Well, actually, I am. Because I don't think he tells the story of Napoleon. I think he just tells a story of Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon, if you follow my thinking. I did not think Joaquin Phoenix was that good in this film, which is a very saddening thing and surprising thing to say, because I really think he is a tremendous actor. I can't wait to see what he does next, but I think he was miscast in this role, and I think he might have worked better in... maybe even The Last Duel, which came out a couple of years ago, in a different Ridley Scott film. I don't think he works well here. That being said, Vanessa Kirby as Josephine is very good, as Napoleon's wife is very, very good in this film. And hold on, I actually think gives a better performance than Joaquin Phoenix. That's something I didn't expect to say, and I think Vanessa Kirby is a great actress. I really do, but I didn't think going into the film that should be better than Joaquin Phoenix. I came out of this film going, Vanessa Kirby was the best thing about that. She gives a really good performance, and you're not quite sure what she's thinking, what she's up to, what her motive is, and she gives off a very subtle and nuanced performance. Opposite Joaquin Phoenix, you just feel like he's being told to do whatever he wants. Rupert Everett shows up later in the film, and I really like Rupert Everett, and it seems like he's having fun playing the role he's playing. I'm not sure if he was, but it seems like he's eating up the role he has been given. But I didn't really care about him too much, and I didn't think he was great because he showed up too late for me to care about his character, to care about his performance. The whole film is just so unengaging, and I was sat there wanting to care, wanting to actually get engaged in what was going on, wanting to actually feel something towards this film, when all I ended up feeling was disdain for this film, and that's not to say, as I've already alluded to a little bit, that this film doesn't have some really great moments. The battle sequences are done very well, and you can tell that Ridley Scott has an eye for doing historical battle sequences. You look at his work in Gladiator, you look at his work in The Last Duel, you look at his work in, the Robin Hood film that he did, or Kingdom of Heaven, or X's Gods and Kings. You can tell he has an eye for doing these big historical battle sequences and doing them really well, editing them well, knowing where to edit, because even so it's probably not him editing those sequences, he has overseen the editing and he knows where to edit, he knows where to cut in these sequences, he knows how to stage these sequences, he knows how to make all the extras actually look real in those sequences too. He knows how to make those sequences feel real, visceral, brutal and raw. But at the same time, I was sitting there during one of the battle sequences, and it's a battle sequence which is shown quite a lot in the trailers for the film, that's involving a battle on the ice. And I was sitting there, and it was a very well done battle sequence. I'm not saying it was, and it's a battle sequence I could never, ever direct in my life. So, I was astounded by the filmmaking going on with the battle sequence. But I was sat there in the cinema thinking, how can this battle sequence be improved? Why am I not feeling quite as intense watching this battle sequence as I should be doing? And I think it's because the film is just showing loads of random people die without really knowing who they are, and the film keeps cutting back. That whole sequence keeps cutting back to Joaquin Pheonix as Napoleon, watching all these people die, and I'm like, okay, I don't really care about him. Give me someone to actually care about, alright? And the film never really did that. What it really should have done in those battle sequences is focus on maybe one of those soldiers trying to run away from all the ice being blown up, and then he goes under the ice. But the film doesn't do that. And it doesn't make us care about any of these people dying. And I understand that might be the point, but I wanted to actually feel some affection for what was going on, or feel some emotional engagement to go, oh my god, this is shocking. The same way I felt about some of the fight sequences in Gladiator, where whenever you see Russell Crowe's character get hurt, you feel the pain of his character. Or the same way I felt about The Last Duel, that whenever you see all these characters in turmoil, you do feel that. And I didn't feel that in this film. I didn't really care about anyone in the battle sequences. The battle sequences on a technical and on a filmmaking level are very, very, very well done. But I didn't care about them. They're entertaining to watch, and they're raw and they're visceral, and it's some of the best work Ridley Scott has done. But he didn't give me reason to care, and it feels like that's what he really focused on the most, because all the exposition scenes and all the scenes, forwarding the narrative and telling this story and telling us where the next section of the film is going to go, is just done in this really dull fashion. None of the filmmaking in scenes where it's just a shot reverse shot sequence, in a conversation between two characters, none of the filmmaking there is particularly engaging, and it feels like you are watching this history lesson that's not as informative, not as educational, and not as interesting and as engaging as it could be. I keep going back to that word engaging, but that's the thing. I know that Ridley Scott can make an engaging historical epic. Just 2 years ago, he made The Last Duel, which I was surprised by how much I was engaged by that. I was not engaged by any of this. Literally from the get-go, I was like, I don't really care about what's going on here, because you haven't given a reason for me to care. I still don't care, and it feels like you have to know about Napoleon's life to really understand this film, and as what he said, I don't know about Napoleon. I remember watching the 1970 film Waterloo about 10, 11, 12 years ago when I was much younger, but I don't really remember anything about it, and I don't really have that much interest in Napoleon, if I'm being honest. is somebody who's never really interested me that much. And I still don't know. Also, this is an add-on. One thing I got to mention when I was doing this podcast, but I literally just remember to mention as soon as I finished recording this podcast, and something I have to mention is how strange this film is. It's a very odd film, and there are some very weird moments. Something I don't really talk about, well, I don't talk about much when I review films, are the sex scenes. The sex scenes in this film are incredibly uncomfortable to watch. I was watching this in a cinema that was about half full, and some people behind me went, when the sex scene came, they went, "Oh, I've never seen that done like that before," which made me laugh more than anything. It was more entertaining, and that was more entertaining than anything in the film itself. There were some very, very weird moments, and you thought, I heard some people say that the sex scenes in House of Gucci were weird. This is on another level. Honestly, it really is. This is a very strange film, and at times I was laughing unintentionally. At least I feel like it was unintentional, because I don't think this film was meant to be funny, but there was a couple of moments where I started to laugh a bit to myself because of how stupid what was taking place on screen was. Yeah, it's a very strange film. I will say the cinematography, and I'm going to credit who did the cinematography here because it is very good. And the cinematography is by Darius Wolski. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing their name there. The cinematography is very well done. It looks... At times, the film looks like a painting. There are certain moments where I was going, wow, you can clearly tell that a lot of time and effort has been put into this shot. And I really wish Ridley Scott put more time and effort into the direction. It felt like he was just phoning it in sometimes with directing, because I know Ridley Scott's directing can be a lot better. And at the same time, Martin Vipes, apology if I mispronounced his name, his score of the film isn't that effective, and he's just done the score for the last couple of seasons of The Crown, for season 5 and the currently airing season 6 of The Crown. And I was listening to the music for the film at one point, and I was going, this sounds very much like the score for the latest couple episodes of The Crown. His score doesn't sound that different. It feels like Ridley Scott heard his score for The Crown and went, you know what, why don't you just put that in this film? Why don't you just use the same sort of themes? And I'm sat there going, why? Why are we doing this? Why is the story being told at this point? Why is this film not giving me a reason to care? And why is Joaquin Phoenix not... Why does his performance doesn't feel like it has any direction? Why is so many parts of this film frustrating rather than riveting or engaging or compelling? Why is this becoming a more unengaging experience for me than an engaging experience? And I really think it's because the film is incoherent and jumps around all over the place, to the point that when the film ends, you don't really understand, if you don't know Napoleon in the first place, like I didn't, you don't really understand any more about his story. I was sat there going, yeah, okay, that was a part of the film well made, but it could have been a lot better. In fact, it should have been a hell of a lot better. Not terrible, because I think technically and filmmaking-wise, the battle sequences are well done. So I think that saves it from being terrible and unwatchable. But I'm never going to see this film again, because everything in between the battle sequences feels like one long, tedious history lecture that I didn't feel any interest in whatsoever. And so, all in all, I hate to say this because I was really looking forward to this film, and I do think Ridley Scott is one of the best directors over the past 50 or so. How long he's been going for? I was about to say 50 years. I don't know if he's been going for 50 years. But I do think Ridley Scott is one of the best directors to be working over however long he has been going for. But I do think this one was a misfire. And so I'm going to say that Napoleon... I'm going to say it's a 4 out of 10. I can't say this film is fine. You know, I give films, I think, a 4 out of 10. And, I give films, I think, a 5 out of 10. Sorry, that's what I should say there, like I did with Hunger Games a couple of days ago now. And I didn't think the film was fine. I think the reason it's getting its 4 out of 10 is because of the production quality. You know, the cinematography is already mentioned, and the battle sequences, and the fact that you do believe this is a film taking place in the late 1700s to the 1800s. You do believe it is a film taking place there. You know, the production quality, as I've already sort of alluded to and sort of mentioned, is all there on screen. You can clearly tell this film has had a big budget. I don't know what the budget is for this film, but you can clearly tell that a substantial budget has been given to this film, and I like the fact that you can see the budget on screen. That's something I really admire about big budget cinema. And I do like the costume design. I do like some of the makeup as well. It does look very much like a period piece, and you believe in the period setting. That is another positive. That being said, I just didn't care about anything else. So technically, it's well done, but I also don't think it's that well directed. I think Ridley Scott took a backseat, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of behind the scenes videos of him, you know, making this film, going, yeah, that's fine, just let the scene play out, let's do another take, why not, let's just do it. And he's not given any direction to Ridley Scott. And the funny thing is, I mean, not Ridley Scott, actually, he's not giving any direction to Joaquin Pheonix. And the funny thing is, Vanessa Kirby's performance feels like it's had direction. I think some of the other supporting performances feel like that as well. But I keep wanting to say Ridley Scott, but Joaquin Phoenix's performance just doesn't, and it's annoying because the film had the potential to be really, really fantastic, and I'm glad it's made. I don't think we have enough historical epics nowadays. I mean, I know last year we had All Quiet on the Western Front, but that didn't even get a proper theatrical release, and this film is at least getting a proper theatrical release. So I'm glad that it is another historical epic that is being made. I'm glad it exists. I do think there's a lot to admire. The battle sequences are visceral and well done. I don't care about them too much because it didn't make me care about them. I think the battle sequences could be more emotionally engaging. That being said, the battle sequences are something to behold, and I think for that alone, it's maybe something to check out on streaming. I don't think it's worth going in the cinema though. I don't think it's worth to check out in the cinema, and I really think it's a big disappointment. I'm hoping Ridley Scott's next film, which is going to be Gladiator 2, another historical epic, I'm hoping that is going to be brilliant, and I can't wait to see it. And I'm hoping he looks at all the criticism, hears all the criticism about Napoleon, improves on that in his next film. But this one just wasn't for me. If you liked it, that's great. Don't want to take that away from you whatsoever. And if you're interested in seeing this in the cinema, go and do so. The film, some people have really, really taken affection to this film and really, really like it. I mean, I think The Guardian gave it 5 stars. But I just thought it was a really tedious history lecture with a lacking leading performance and with nothing to really care about, and with incoherent storytelling and an incoherent narrative that really should have been told in a more coherent fashion. And the film just feels like the best of Napoleon. It felt like the best of his life. It doesn't feel like a proper biopic, unlike Oppenheimer did earlier this year. And so, as I've titled this podcast today, the film has masterful battle sequences, and it really does masterfully done, but it's let down by incoherent storytelling. And that is why the film ultimately did not work for me. And so, all in all, as I've already said, I'm going to say once more that Napoleon is a 4 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that is it for the podcast for today. So if you have seen Napoleon, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you loved it, and if you did, as I've already said, that is great. I am jealous. I wish I loved it. And if you did love it, please let me know why. And if you did love it, please let me know why in the comment section below. Maybe you feel similar to me. Whatever your thoughts are on Napoleon, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.